We'd like to start with a land acknowledgement statement. Both the College of St. Benedict and St. John's University occupy the original homelands of the Dakota and Anishinaabe peoples. We honor, respect, and acknowledge the Indigenous peoples forcibly removed from this territory, whose connection remains today. St. Benedict's Monastery and St. John's Abbey previously operated boarding schools for Native children. Now, students, faculty, monastics, and staff are working to repair relationships with our Native Nation neighbors.
My name is Claire Lensch.
And my name is Ethan Aronson.
We are so excited to be your MCs for the evening.
I'm a St. John's graduate from the class of 1995.
And I'm a College of St. Benedict graduate from the class of 2016.
Eventually, I returned to CSB and SJU to begin my professional journey in higher education as an admission counselor.
Eventually, I returned to St. Ben's and St. John's to continue, to begin my professional journey in higher education as an admission counselor too.
We didn't plan this.
We swear. After 3 years of recruiting students, I found a new home working in the Experience and Professional Development Office.
And after 3 years of admission work, I also started in the Experience and Professional Development Office.
Anyways, choosing St. Ben's and St. John's to call my home away from home at 18 years old is to this day one of the best decisions I ever made. If you know me, you know I'm a CSB SJU fangirl to my core. I care deeply about the student experience of our Bennies and Johnnies, and I'm grateful that my journey after graduation eventually brought me back to these special places that taught me how important it is to let your light shine. So important, in fact, I went and I got it tattooed on my arm as a daily reminder just last week. I'm motivated as a young woman still figuring things out to own my story every day by letting my light shine, and I'm inviting others to do the same. I'm looking forward to seeing our 6 speakers shine bright on the stage for you tonight.
After graduating in '95, I ventured off to a wide variety of personal and professional roles in places ranging from China to Bangladesh, Europe, Alaska, Hawaii, and eventually back to Collegeville and St. Joe, back home to St. Ben's and St. John's. I have encountered many Bennies and Johnnies along the way, and I've enjoyed hearing their stories. Tonight, I'm honored to join you in listening to 6 new ones, filled with adventure, courage, wisdom, and heart. So, what is REDTalks?
Well, inspired by popular TED Talks, the REDTalks event was created to spotlight the voices and humanity of our own CSB and SJU community.
And what's truly special, tonight is the 12th annual REDTalks, but the first one we've held and hosted here on campus. So REDTalks has typically been held in the Twin Cities at a variety of locations, but this is the first time here at St. Ben's and St. John's. So why not try something new, right?
Tonight's event is brought to you by the CSB and SJU Young Alum Committee, whose mission is to bridge and foster the lifelong relationships between young Bennies and Johnnies and their alma maters. To our young alums in the audience tonight, listen up. Later on, we'll tell you more ways you can get involved.
As every member of our St. Ben's and St. John's community knows, our foundation is the Rule of St. Benedict. The very first word in the rule is listen. So listening requires intentional effort, setting aside distractions so we are not only hear the other person, but we listen with our hearts and minds, so we are fully present with the other.
Tonight, we have 6 incredible speakers here to make you think, make you smile and laugh, maybe even make you shed a tear. We invite you all to listen fully, be here intentionally, and be ready to get inspired. We know you're all here to enjoy our speakers, and we can't wait to get them on stage, but we have some housekeeping items we have to go through first, so that tonight is a successful night as possible for all of our speakers that have worked hard to be here. First, each speaker has spent many dozens of hours preparing their Red Talk. They've worked with their speaker coaches, met with each other as a speaker team, and practiced memorizing their entire talk, unlike us. Each talk is being recorded and captured by our communication professionals here tonight, Tom and Robert, And they'll do some post-editing so these incredible talks can live on the internet for years to come. As such, our speaker coaches have instructed our speakers to pause and restart a sentence if they feel the need. As an audience, we will encourage them quietly and just understand that that's part of this show.
Second, let's take a for instance moment. Tonight, roughly around the time we'll be getting ready for our intermission, all those who have opted into the severe weather alert notifications for the CSB SJU community will be getting a test notification about severe weather. Yes, we planned that. Because we want each speaker to have the best possible experience and the best possible recording. We ask everyone right now, put your hands on that smartphone you have with you, literally, touch it, take it out, put it in airplane mode, no buzzes, no rings, no tones, no beeps. It's going to be just a test that alert later. All right? Thank you for doing that.
Third, tonight's experience is that, a full experience. And we want you to be involved in next year's. So you'll see on some of your seats, there's a little prompt card. Please feel free at some point tonight to fill out that card, drop it in the baskets, or hand them to ushers at the end of the evening.
Fourth, we have 6 speakers tonight, each of whom will speak for no more than 10 minutes. After speaker number 3, we will have that brief 10-minute intermission. You will find restrooms located outside and down the stairs in the event space. And as always, ask any of our team members and ushers if you need anything.
Then, after all of our speakers have finished, you will have an opportunity to engage with them as a group. We're going to bring them all back out on stage for a 10-minute Q&A session. So you can ask your questions, pick their brains, and learn more about what brought them to the red circle tonight.
And finally, we have one last rule, one last ask, that you clap and scream and cheer for the speakers before and after their talks tonight. They have invested countless hours over the last 7 months or so preparing for tonight. Your positive energy is super helpful and very much appreciated. Okay, is everyone ready to bring out our first speaker?
I think they're ready.
I think they are. First, to take his place on the REDTalks stage is St. John's Jr., Kanan Cooper. He is a biochemistry major, neuroscience minor, and entrepreneurship scholar with a pre-med concentration laser-focused on becoming a distinguished pediatric neurosurgeon. If that isn't enough to keep him busy, you should check out the list of other pursuits he has in his bio in the program, as well as he'll speak some more tonight.
Kanan is a well-traveled
and well-dressed
global citizen. He's from the beautiful Nassau, Bahamas. He has the unique ability to lean into his individual strengths while weathering life's storms, giving him the confidence to embrace life's setbacks. Friends, help us welcome Kanan Cooper to the REDTalks stage.
Let's do this. Don't let setbacks set you back. Say it with me. Don't let setbacks set you back. No, with more passion. Let me hear y'all. Don't let setbacks set you back. Awesome. I am no stranger to setbacks. I've had to live them my entire life. I've seen many fall. Even I fell a few times. Each setback takes a piece of you with it. Spirits shattered beyond repair. When does the pain end? What about the regret? Setback number 1. My mother was hospitalized while in labor with me. Doctors suspect that I was born with congenital ptosis due to the complications surrounding my birth. Look at my eyes. One drooped, the other one still on vacation, it seems. Yeah, you can laugh, you know. It's been like that my entire life. Imagine me going to school looking like this. Pirate, Cockeye Cyclops, just some of the creative names I've had to endure over the years within the school district. Let me hear y'all say, don't let setbacks set you back. Despite many surgeries, my eyes rose and it fell, rose and fell. This one in particular would not just get up. We tried surgeries in Nassau and in Miami, but again, it still collapsed. But I didn't let setbacks set me back. Instead, I saw my eye as my first battle scar. I was unique. I was different. And I appreciated my sight at a very young age, which afforded me to become very outspoken, presenting myself in a very different manner than my peers. Eventually, I became a leader among my student body and became the head boy. How was that? Because I allowed myself to rise above every trial and tribulation. Setback number 2. Just horrible. The year was 2016. I was 12 years old. Hurricane Matthew, a Category 5 hurricane, with wind speeds of over 200 miles per hour. This catastrophic storm was a direct hit to my home, Nassau, Bahamas, with a surge that reached up to 15 feet above sea level in some areas. As the water began to rise and flood our streets, my parents told me to pack a bag, say a prayer, and brace for the storm. We lined off one by one, starting with my father, my mother, my sister, my brother, then me, then my older brother, and we locked hands and entered the storm. I remember the wind mixed with rain tearing at my skin like a whip. I remember the water being up to my chest and my sibling's shoulder. I remember my mom fell into the water, completely submerged, and the terror that I saw in my dad's eyes as he pulled his soulmate up. I remember the wind pushing me back as I tried to move forward with my family. But let me hear y'all say, don't let setbacks set you back. Anybody else would have allowed that situation to be the end of them. But my family and I, we rose to the occasion. And from that day onwards, I made it my mission to see the world. I was not about to die on that island. I became a global citizen, traveling the world. I visited Vietnam, Taiwan, Australia, London, Greece. I'm here. That's because I didn't allow myself or my family to suffer at the hands of setbacks. Winston Churchill once said, when you're going through hell, keep going. I am telling you, don't let setbacks set you back. I hear some person saying it. It's catching on. There we go. Setback number 3. Although I lead an impressive life and achievements, it made finding friends, believe it or not, very difficult. It was very hard to relate to my peers. From a very young age, I was always outspoken. I was always the individual who was the chaperone or grandfather of my friend group, if you will. That has not changed since entering the College of St. Benedict and St. John's University. Just for context, I am 20 years old. Oh yeah, I heard it. How many of you thought I was 42 with a wife and 2 children? Raise your hand. There we go. In some ways, my maturity as well as my demeanor is a blessing and a curse in some ways. I've always been an individual who had to think about the past, the present, and the future, the responsible one. I was always the odd one out, if you will. I am an international student from the beautiful Commonwealth of the Bahamas, after all, so I had to get used to being the one who was not like everybody else. I didn't have the luxury of allowing life's pleasures distract me. I had to grow up faster than anybody else because of my past experiences, because of setbacks again, tearing a piece of you with it. In studying the art of war, the author's words resonated with me. Warriors are not born, and they are not made. Warriors create themselves through trial and error, pain and suffering, and their ability to conquer their own faults. Words easier said, I know. I know what it means to hate yourself, to hate everyone and everything. I know what it means to feel like a failure. I know what it means to have hell knock on your door, to feel that gut punch from life. I've been through it every day. I know what it means to wish you weren't born. Yes. And I can confidently tell you that the pain you feel inside right now will never amount to the pain the world will carry without you in it. I have rose to trials and tribulations my entire life, not because I enjoyed setbacks, but because I found a way to let setbacks become my muse, my fuel. I have been able to use setbacks as my springboard for success. See, individuals who have faced these trials, they are able to find new ways to circumvent them. They find new ways to rise above a non-linear path. I am a living testament of this. I didn't allow setbacks to stop me. And so I'm asking you all, no matter how rough and tough life gets, please don't let setbacks set you back. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Kanan. Thank you for engaging our minds and encouraging us to view challenges in different ways. Our next speaker, Tess Kavanaugh, is a first-year student at CSB and SJU. Let me say that again. Tess is a first-year student. I don't know about you, but I was in no way in any place to be up on stage giving a talk like she's about to as a first-year student in college. But Tess has traveled a different path than many. In fact, Tess shared with us, and I quote, "In the span of 12 months, I was almost eaten by a cheetah in the Ngorongoro crater, put into an arranged marriage with a young Maasai tribesman, and almost joined a Buddhist monastery by mistake in Angkor Wat, Cambodia." Friends, let's welcome Tess Kavanaugh to the REDTalks.
Must do at some point in their life. Go on a 2-week trip canoeing and camping in the Banju waters. I went with a group of 9 other young women, and we started our trip with 3 canoes, 9 paddles, and 2 food packs. But by the end of our trip, we ended up losing our maps and getting most of our food stolen along the way. The journey was simultaneously one of the best and worst experiences of my entire life. But thanks to all the losses, I gained insight at who I am at my core. Day 1. As soon as we put our paddles into the water, we heard the sound of thunder and the wet feeling of rain overcome our entire body. Mother Nature was saying, "Welcome to your trip of a lifetime." But made sure we were listening by giving us a beautiful double rainbow as soon as we made it safely to the nearest campsite. At dusk, we put one of our food packs in a bear hang and the other underneath a canoe due to its heavy weight. We went to bed, and the next morning when we awoke, we found that the food pack under the canoe was gone. Was it a bear? A raccoon? Another hungry critter? Maybe. But if and only if that animal could have picked up a canoe and placed it neatly and quietly 10 feet away. We were all in a bit of shock, not knowing how a group of teenagers would go another 12 days in the Boundary Waters with one food pack that contained just 3 things: granola, toothpaste, and tampons. Now, by day 3, we had eaten granola for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then again, granola, granola, granola. But at least we got to brush our teeth, right? Throughout the trip, I challenged myself to have a smile on my face the entire time, and to never once complain. One of my defining personality traits is optimism, and what better time or place to bring out that positivity than in the Boundary Waters on this trip. I went to a Catholic high school visitation that believed in the central role of the little virtues. Virtues such as kindness, joyfulness, and gentle strength of character that make a huge impact in the world. I was taught that something even as small as waving to someone in passing can make a huge impact in someone's day. I thought about how my education was at play in the Boundary Waters, and I knew that I could make even a small impact on the girls on this trip with my positivity. I was also holding out hope that on day 4, we'd be able to paddle to get more food. And now, I'd invite you to close your eyes with me. Imagine what I'm about to describe. You are a hungry teenager. You've just gotten in the car, and you're on your way driving to a restaurant to get your favorite meal. You get there, you get out of the car, so hungry, so excited. You're walking up to the restaurant, your stomach grumbling, and then you see a sign on the restaurant door that says, "Closed." Now open your eyes. Our group of 9 hungry, unshowered teenage girls had arrived at where we thought we'd be able to pick up more food, only to find that we were paddling down a ravine with nothing but cliffs in sight. There was absolutely no place for us to pick up more food. When we realized this, we found our mistake. We mislabeled our maps, and we couldn't pick up more food on day 4, but on day 7. Here's to 3 more days of granola and powdered milk. But on day 5, we lost the maps. We got in the canoe after stopping at a beautiful waterfall and started paddling away, each canoe thinking another group of canoers had possession of the maps. And then a few hours later, some campers smartly asked to see the maps, but no one had them. So we did the only thing we could possibly do: pray and turn around and paddle back to the waterfall, hoping that our maps were there. Somehow, we found the waterfall again, and our maps were right where we had left them. And we got to see a beautiful waterfall twice in the same day. And now day 6 arrived, and my mind was staying focused on the fact that we still had some sort of food, albeit granola. And I also recall my friends complimenting me on how much my optimism meant to them. It reminded me that my positivity was not in vain, and that I must continue to help the group in this way. And now, the day arrived, day 7. Our last portage, canoes on our backs, we start walking. But as I'm walking, I realize I'm shaking. My arms and my legs are moving back and forth uncontrollably. And I just start weeping silently. lack of nutritious food, and built up stress and emotion were coming out of my body physically in that moment. I made it to the end of the portage, and I remember my friends coming up, noticing I was crying, and just hugging me. They didn't say a word. They didn't have to. We were all just sharing in a knowing kind of pain. We got in the canoes, our last really short paddle, before we could pick up more food. And I just sat quietly, thinking I had just let all of my friends down. My tears were not the positive self that I had committed to being. When we finally made it to land again, my friends told me something I didn't know I needed to hear. One of them looked at me and said, "Tess, you know you don't have to be positive all the time." Everyone was nodding and agreeing. And then another friend said, "Tess, we love you just because you're you." That was the moment, both on that trip and in the journey of my life, that I realized my dignity doesn't come from how I am, my positivity, my smiles. My dignity comes from who I am, from just being. When my friends shared that loving truth, it felt like they unlocked a door that opened me up to a whole new world of understanding. We matter because we're human, just because we exist. Now, it's my first year here at St. Ben's and St. John's, and I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of incredible people. Amazing professors, fellow first-year students, older students, and staff who are already mentors. And I've been able to take what I learned on that trip in the Boundary Waters and implement it into my life here. I'm striving to be a person that reminds people that they matter just because they exist. And now to the people who stole our food pack in the Boundary Waters, I want to say thank you. Because while they were eating our tightly packed, carefully planned, and highly nutritious food, I was being served some essential life lessons. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess, for taking us on that inspiring journey. I think I speak for a lot of us when I say, we're so glad you are you. After our next speaker wraps up, we will have a brief intermission, and there's more than just granola out in the lobby for you. Our next speaker has spoken on a TEDx stage before. She's also traveled to the beautiful Viña del Mar, Chile, where she immersed herself in the culture and language for several months. In addition, this speaker has recently appeared in her first music video as a dancer for a band called the Electric Animals. As a fellow dancer myself, I am very jealous.
To say Megan has a diverse range of interests and talents would be an understatement. To say Megan is a leader and change maker in the realm of transformational learning and helping others better understand organizational neurodiversity is spot on. Friends, please help us welcome to the REDTalks stage tonight 2007 CSB alumna Megan Fitzgerald Bondi.
I was 12 years old when I told my best friend my idea. Let's plan a Halloween-themed day camp for the kids in our neighborhood. We ran across the street, down into my unfinished basement, started adding ideas to the lesson planning book my mom gave us for playing school. We went out with our parents to buy candy and decorations. And we stuck to our budget from charging 50 cents per child per hour. It was the 90s, and as a young entrepreneur, I wasn't in it for the profit. When the kids arrived in their costumes, they sat on the carpet remnant, listened to the exciting learning activities for the day. As a young leader, I loved learning about goal setting, communication, creativity, finance. I loved getting to dream big, plan it out, and put it into action with my friend. But I haven't always flourished as a leader. As an educational coach, I was walking down the vaulted hallway of the middle school where I worked, and a 6th grade student was standing outside the main office. I had come to know him with his infectious smile, amazing sense of humor, unbelievable hip-hop dance moves, and frequent visits to the office for getting kicked out of class. The school resource officer came and led him out of the building into the back of a police car. He had been asked to give his music and speakers at lunch, and the adult reported that he was being defiant and dangerous. I burst into tears as I shared my concerns with another school leader about treating a neurodivergent student this way. I couldn't understand why we didn't treat students who struggled with emotional regulation the same way we would treat a student with a reading challenge. But whenever I shared these ideas, I was told to slow down, be patient, that I was too sensitive, too idealistic. I felt like there were chainsaws everywhere, cutting my ideas down, cutting me down. I was exhausted and losing hope. I reached out for help to navigate my intense emotions. Maybe I had an emotional disorder. From the outside, most people saw someone who was passionate, going above and beyond, thriving at work. But I was actually losing myself. Then I was evaluated, and something surprising happened. I'm gifted? I thought giftedness was a program in schools for advanced students, but I realized that it's a lot more complex. Giftedness is neurodivergent mind type. It has a lot of similar traits to people who are autistic, dyslexic, and ADHD. Our minds function differently from the dominant societal norms. Paula Prober, an expert in giftedness, uses the term rainforest mind to have a more descriptive way to talk about it. People with rainforest minds are intense, complex, highly sensitive, idealistic, and have a strong sense of fairness. We need to learn deeply about our preferred topics, and we need to be challenged and supported. Even though I was really good at masking my traits, the deforestation of my rainforest mind was happening every day. But I finally realized that I needed to include myself in my advocacy rather than just focus on creating inclusive environments for other neurodivergent people. Oftentimes when we hear the word diversity, we think of race or gender. Neurodiversity is the natural variation in how people think, function, and perceive the world. It was so freeing to learn the neurodiversity lens, that there is no ideal or normal brain. I could stop seeing my traits as deficits, see them as strengths. A Buddhist monk named Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "When you plant lettuce, if it does not grow well, You don't blame the lettuce. You look for reasons it is not doing well. Understanding what I needed in my environment to be able to grow and thrive was essential to being able to advocate for myself. With over 370 million views of online posts with the hashtag #GiftedKidBurnout, and the problem not going away for gifted adults, organizations need to be intentional about supporting people with rainforest minds. Luckily, there is a way for leaders to support us, and it's through Grow interviews. Grow interviews are different from job interviews. They uncover the invisible learning and development needs to be able to build on people's strengths and support their growth. If I would have been asked the questions in a Grow interview when I was an educational coach, I would have revealed my need to be validated when I share ethical concerns, to have an intentional leadership team meeting agenda with meaningful goals focused on equity, and to focus my energy on my strengths of systems thinking and strategic planning. When I did a Grow interview for that 6th grade student I told you about, I quickly learned he needed to be able to listen to music and move while he worked. Some people worried that that would be unfair to provide those types of accommodations. But just like a tulip needs different soil, sunlight, and water than a pine tree, people need different resources to grow and thrive. Providing the resources that each person needs creates more inclusive learning environments for everyone. When leaders use Grow interviews, they can help end the deforestation of rainforest mines. By uncovering the invisible learning needs and strengths, they can cultivate environments that are more inclusive for everyone. So this week, I invite you to take 5 minutes and ask yourself one of the questions from the Grow interview. Ask yourself, what lights me up? Get specific about what it is that energizes you. For me, it's equity, creative problem solving, and systems thinking. When we learn in a way that aligns with our strengths, like when I was that 12-year-old basement entrepreneur, or now as a neurodivergent learning and development specialist, the possibility for our growth is endless. Celebrating neurodiversity is as essential for organizational success as supporting biodiversity is for a thriving ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you for shedding light on the beauty and complexity of rainforest mines.
Wow. I don't know about all of you, but I feel like I've been on the ride of my life so far tonight. And we're only halfway through. That concludes the first part of our event. We will have that 10-minute brief intermission like we mentioned, and then we'll be back for 3 more great talks.
So make sure you grab some food, because that will be going away, I think, after intermission. And don't forget to fill out those cards. There are some boxes. You can drop them in out there as well. And please be back in your seats, if you would, please, at 6:55. We'll begin the program promptly then.
10 minutes.
10
We'll see you
minutes.
back. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. It's time to get settled in. Are we ready to hear 3 more fantastic speakers?
Our next speaker is joining us from Shanghai, China. Literally. John Murray, class of 2011, has spent the last 12 years living and working in China, and thanks to technology, we are able to enjoy his talk virtually tonight, even though he wishes he could be here in person.
John has distinguished himself in the world of sports marketing, dedicated to building global connections and breaking barriers for underrepresented athletes and communities through Project Hope in Motion. John's travels and work in China have been building bridges and connections, adventures that began right here at St. Ben's and St. John's.
In a world seemingly more divided than ever, John is about to share how we truly are one big family, and that building bridges is something we are all called to do.
Please give a virtual warm welcome to John Murray, everyone.
大家好, I'm speaking to you today from Shanghai, China, so it's only fitting to start with Mandarin. 大家, hello everybody, or a more direct translation, hello big family. And despite what we see in the news, we are a big global family. I'll begin with the story of me, but ultimately, this is a story of the power of we. I first came to China in 2011 to teach English in Chongqing, China. I had no idea that Chongqing was by some means considered the biggest city on planet Earth. On day number 2, I was walking back to my new apartment when I saw a young shirtless Chinese guy motioning for me to join him on the basketball court. I didn't speak any Chinese, he didn't speak any English. But he eventually was able to communicate his name, Kobe, and I was able to communicate where I came from, Timberwolves. We played basketball for 2 hours and had no problem communicating. He invited me to Chongqing's specialty, an explosively spicy fondue, hot pot. The next day we showed up at the basketball court again. This time, him with an English language app on his phone, and me with a Chinese language dictionary. Through sports and friendship, we were beginning to build bridges. Our first bridge. Over the course of 2 years of dedicated Chinese language study, I was able to pick up a conversational usage of the language and work with a variety of Chinese factories doing their international sales. Together with groups of innovators, I was able to travel across 27 different countries, leading international sales efforts. And this time, I was getting paid to build my international bridges. Thinking that I was onto something, I started a global trade company in the heart of a global trade war. But through a lucky series of events, I was able to connect with the Minnesota Timberwolves, my first client. The Timberwolves were preparing to travel to China for the NBA China Games. At this time, there were more people in Beijing, Shanghai watching basketball games than there would be in New York or Minneapolis. Sport was a global bridge bringing us together. In 2017, I was responsible for leading the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Golden State Warriors on their China trip for their social media, their events, and their strategic partnerships. This international bridge led to more opportunities with athletes and sports teams, and an invitation in 2019 to Doha, Qatar, where I built out a strategic framework for the World Cup. I was living my dream, and my schedule was skyrocketing. So was travel obligations. So from Doha, I traveled to Shenzhen, China, where I was to meet with the real Kobe Bryant for the announcement of the FIBA World Cup. After meeting Kobe, I was to travel from China to Vietnam to meet a college friend in Hanoi and travel throughout Halong Bay. I was having the time of my life, but exhausted. As we were traveling on our cruise ship at Halong Bay, I looked at my friend and said, I need a nap. Closed my eyes and had the best sleep of my life. Or so I told my friend, but he looked back at me shocked. John, you were shaking. You were biting your teeth and your tongue, eventually my fingers. We had no idea what was going on. We were scared, so we called my sister, a physician's assistant traveling at the time in Puerto Rico. She answered and suggested that I had potentially suffered a seizure and that we needed to get to a hospital as soon as possible. We found the Vietnamese intern that we had befriended a couple hours before, and she arranged for a motorboat to pick us up in Ha Long Bay, race us to an ambulance that she had set up, and eventually to a hospital and an MRI machine. Doctors in Vietnam communicated with my sister and other doctors in the United States as they saw brain scans that showed a large lump on the right side of my head. We didn't know what was going on, but these doctors internationally, along with doctor friends in China, began working together to rule out some of the potential causes. AIDS, syphilis, Japanese encephalitis, a variety of horrible diseases, but we all agreed they were treatable. Together we could attack these. They were preferable to a potential brain tumor. Enter the superhero. My mom flew from traveling with friends and family in Ireland to London to expedite a visa with the Vietnamese consulate in London and come to be with me together in Vietnam. Ultimately, she played the role of orchestrating all of these doctors, friends, and family around the world. Together, they ruled out disease one by one and ultimately decided the next best step was for me to return home to St. Paul, Minnesota and continue our medical plan. And doctors in St. Paul decided that what we needed was a biopsy surgery, resection surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation, because I had an astrocytoma tumor, a malignant tumor that had grown the size of a human hand in my head and had caused me to shake. We needed to attack immediately, and we needed the expertise of these people all around the world. The resection surgery was scheduled to be 4 hours, but ultimately lasted 7 hours, as the doctor, a neurosurgeon from Chile, operated and saw everything so clearly. He was concerned there would be potential consequence of blindness, paralysis, was confident that I wouldn't die, so my family was thrilled when none of these were true. And I emerged from surgery sticking out my tongue, a sign of cognitive awareness. Finally, doctors in Vietnam and China were able to rest well, knowing that they had gotten me this far. Up next, we still had radiation and chemotherapy, which sound horrible, but really weren't that bad when you have friends and family writing letters every day. Love, good vibes, prayers, anything to get you through. On one especially challenging day of radiation, I received a letter from China, from Chongqing. A letter from Kobe, my Kobe. Kobe said, "We are brothers. We'll get through this together. And the Lakers are still better than the Timberwolves. But you can do this." Just what I needed. 4 years later, I continue to receive this medicine, along with regular treatments. Love and friendship around the world is saving me. All of you are part of this journey now. We, together, are Daja. We are Daja, a big family working together to save me, to save we. Thank you, Daja.
Wow. Thank you, John. Building community, how important and powerful that can be. Even from the other side of the world, I'm sure that story hits close to home to many.
We are so excited to bring our next speaker to the stage. She's going to take us through her experience creating her new framework built on her strong foundation of faith. Her courage to be vulnerable is a beautiful example of what being a Benny is all about.
Elizabeth Wold is a junior communication major and entrepreneur scholar. As a student dedicated to growing in her faith during her college experience, Elizabeth created and now runs an on-campus worship club for Bennies called Lifeline.
Through coaching dance and publishing her very own devotional, Elizabeth's dedication to fostering communication, entrepreneurship, and spiritual leadership is evident. Elizabeth aspires to be a public speaker, but her talents actually began on the stage when she performed as a munchkin for the Twin Cities Ballet, A Wizard of Oz, at just age 7.
I was actually in The Wizard of Oz as a high school student, but I only was cast as a tree. Tonight, she will grace the stage, the REDTalks stage, with a different kind of performance. Let's put our hands together for Elizabeth Wold.
Imagine tumbling with immense fear as you scream, thinking you're about to wake up in an ambulance. I'm sure not many of you can say you have literally fallen down a cliff before. Unfortunately, I have. Don't worry, I was okay. However, I relate this experience to the mental pain I felt every day as a senior in high school when my mental health fell to rock bottom. I was trying to fight to save a friendship with a friend who wasn't even treating me like a friend at all, while at the same time battling the beginning of a leg disability as a dancer. My disability was triggered by anxiety, which increased tremendously through the hours I spent fighting with my own emotions over the problems I faced. I would take walks to bring clarity to my mind, but each step was like my brain having a fist fight with my body. I'd have to use all of the power from my tired and fogged brain to tell my leg to pick itself up from the ground, extend forward, and not shatter to pieces as it reached the pavement in front of me. Throughout this time, I let my thoughts control my mood, which mentally destroyed me. My untreated anxiety and depression led me to question what I was doing wrong with my life and what God's purpose for me was. Think of the first thing you tend to do when you are overwhelmed by a problem. Do you turn to substances to numb the pain? Hide from family and friends to avoid the topic? Or oversleep in the comfort of being buried under your covers? The National Institute of Health reports that 57.8 million adults live with some form of mental illness. However, research suggests some small yet significant things we can each do to better support our mental health. One of those things is setting boundaries. Maybe you've never considered setting a boundary before. Psychologist Dr. Becky Kennedy defines boundaries as the things we tell people we will do that require the other person to do nothing. I find this idea of boundary setting very empowering. It is me clearly communicating to others what I am able and willing to do when I want to change the course of interactions with someone who is affecting me in a way that I no longer wish to continue. I am not making a request. I am creating a new set of structured choices for myself. Boundaries teach us that we are only in control of ourselves and how we react to the behaviors of others. We are not in control of others or their choices. Have you ever been in a one-sided relationship where you feel like you're the only one putting in thoughtful effort? What about feeling constantly burnt out or feeling the pressure to always say yes to what others ask of you? These may be signs you need to try setting a boundary. I had to take the step of setting a boundary when my best friend, who I cared about deeply, suddenly stopped caring about me. before high school graduation, I started to feel that I was losing the friendship with someone who, when we were just little kids, we were building Power Ranger costumes out of construction paper. A picture I wish my grandpa still had of me, my brother, and my childhood best friend. We'd grown up spending almost every weekend of our summers together, so we knew each other really well. By the time I was a senior in high school, we'd been friends for 15 years. By the time I was coming to graduate high school, I felt like he was putting in less effort than me. I tried so hard to fight to save the friendship with him, but each time it just led to me questioning what I was doing wrong with my life and why it wasn't enough. On a normal day, he would talk to me for hours when he wasn't at school or practice. But suddenly, when I needed someone to talk to, he wasn't there for me. I was not okay, and I was tired of being treated in a way that I didn't deserve. I had to make the choice to set a boundary and cut all contact with him. Someone who was once my best friend for a long time wouldn't be a part of my future. Not at my grad party, my 18th birthday, or my wedding someday. But I had to make the choice to let him go. Friendship, by definition, is a relationship of choice. If someone is not making you feel like the best version of yourself, it's okay to set a boundary. I've done this plenty of times in my 3 years of college. To be honest, I've changed friend groups each year because I value my time and energy enough to do that. Let's think of the only perfect man to walk this earth, Jesus Christ. Even Jesus used boundaries to stand up for himself. Matthew chapter 26 says, Jesus said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." Jesus sets a boundary here by allowing himself to go spend time with his Father in solitude. While he could have let his disciples join him in prayer, he chose to be in a devout time of intentional quietness with the Lord. Here, Jesus shows the need for self-care, even in times when he was being called to the needs of others through his ministry. Growing up, I struggled with confidence and allowed others to walk over me. Now, I will confidently speak up when someone is treating me poorly, and I'm proud of that. I have a motto: do not tolerate being treated less than you deserve. Sometimes this means letting go of people. As a Christian, I find myself making it a priority to fill my cup with things that glorify God. However, just because someone had been my friend for 15 years didn't mean they had to be forever. People may say to me, "But Elizabeth, you're a Christian. Why would you leave people like that?" Because I am willing to have the self-respect, and I want that for you too. And I will stand up for myself the way Jesus did. Remember, it isn't bad to set a boundary. It isn't bad to walk away from someone. Sometimes we might find it challenging. I know it's hard. We might be filled with the guilt of not wanting to say no, or we don't want to get hurt. It's by far one of the hardest things I've done, but it's also by far worth it. It's not about abandoning others. It's about honoring your worth. Would you rather spend your life drained or valued? In moments of overwhelm, you may find yourself caught in the expectations of others. But what if you start choosing differently? What if you give yourself the opportunity to set a boundary? Jesus himself shows the importance of boundaries by standing firm in his mission. Boundaries not only show the importance of care for yourself, but they also preserve self-respect and keep healthy boundaries. In a world where mental health challenges affect millions, boundaries become not just a necessity, or not just an option, but a necessity for our well-being. Jesus has a mission to set a boundary, and we should likewise follow that. It took me multiple experiences of being walked over to find my voice and recognize my worth. My hope for you is that it takes less uncertainty in your negative experiences, and that finding your worth starts today. Let's work to create an environment that sees boundaries as a positive for personal fulfillment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for helping us think deeply about how boundaries can create room in our lives. From one dancer to another, I applaud your willingness to find balance and rhythm in life beyond the stage. Our final speaker is no stranger to sharing his story out here on the stage. Tom Thibodeau is a husband, father, grandfather, teacher, and community servant. Having spent the last 40 years teaching at Viterbo University in Wisconsin, he has distinguished himself as an educator. 20 years ago, he created the master's degree in servant leadership for the university, the only master's of its kind in the entire country.
When he's not in the classroom, Tom regularly speaks to national audiences about the servant leadership movement. He and his wife Priscilla serve as directors of Place of Grace, a hospitality house dedicated to building human dignity and serving meals. They are also part owners of Leo and Leona's Tavern and Dance Hall in La Crosse, Wisconsin, so be sure to stop by there the next time you find yourself down that way. I hear the dance floor is a real labor of love.
The Rule of St. Benedict, established over 1,500 years ago, influenced Tom during his time as a Johnny to lead a life dedicated to serving others. The ripple effect of that influence continues impacting others to this day. Let's give Tom, from the class of 1973, a Benedictine welcome to the REDTalks stage.
When I was 12, I became an adult. When I was 12, my mother was pregnant with my youngest sister. I'm the oldest of 6. Her pregnancy was difficult, so her bed was moved from our family room. And from that bed, she taught me how to cook and clean and iron and sew. These are skills that I still have today. I cannot fix anything. Ask my wife. She has the tools. But I can cook, I can clean, I can iron, I can sew. My mom gave birth to my youngest sister and went to deep postpartum depression. And I dropped out of school in the 6th grade. And I cooked, I cleaned, I ironed, I sewed. I gave my brothers haircuts, went on my skill set. But a 12-year-old boy can't raise a family. And we had no family in Wisconsin Rapids, so my dad had asked members of our church that they take us in. This is 1962. We're not talking a great deal about mental illness today. Could you imagine what it was like in 1962? So my dad had asked members of our church that they take us in. This is before foster care. And we all went to live with different families, and I was sent to live with a boy who was in the 7th grade, a year older than myself. And he kept getting in trouble with his dad, and his dad would come up at night and would yell at him. So I kind of felt like I was being yelled at as well. And one night I'm laying there in my bed looking up at the stars, and I just said a prayer, "Dear God, please take care of my mom, please take care of my dad, please bring our family back together." And at that moment I felt this overwhelming sense of love, that my prayer was answered. At age 12 I became a person of prayer. 2 weeks later, I'm riding with my dad in the car. I said, "Who's taking care of Mom?" He said, "Well, psychologists and psychiatrists." I said, "What do you have to do to become a psychologist and psychiatrist?" He said, "Well, you get a degree in psychology and get a master's degree in counseling. If you want to be a psychiatrist, you have to go to medical school." At that moment, I decided right then and there that I want to be a person of service. I wanted to reach out to people like my mom who suffered. I came to St. John's and majored in psychology. My mom came home after 13 weeks, And there we were at home. She'd come home from the psychiatric unit. And for the next 6 weeks, a casserole would show up at our house every night. The community understood that this mother with 6 young children couldn't feed them, so they fed us. The community fed us. Now it's my turn. And that's why my wife and I are engaged in our Catholic Worker House of feeding people who come each and every day for dinner. Well, I graduated from high school, and I have a blessing of coming to St. John's University, introduced to the Benedictine tradition, where what did I experience? Prayer, service, and community. I came home. All of us need a place where we belong, knowing that being with them is coming home. And this sacred place, the men and women of the Benedictine tradition, formed me for my life's work. And my life's work, I'm an ambassador for goodness. Each and every day I wake up and I try to remind good people how good they are. I figure the other team's got enough players on it. Isn't it true? The only thing that changes any situation is when good people get together and do good work. Did you ever see a group of cynics get together and play in a baseball league for children? Do you ever see a group of skeptics say, let's have a clinic for people that are underserved? No! It's only good people like yourselves who get together and say, let's do good work. And for crying out loud, how about all the people who have stood before us tonight? I'm looking out in the audience, I can't see all of you, but I know there's people of my generation. We have to put a stop to this foolishness. People our age walking around going, oh, young people these days, oh, young people these days. Listen, I was back here in the 60s. We weren't so hot. Oh, young people these days, did you hear these stories tonight? Weren't they powerful? And wherever I go, I'm meeting good people doing good work, and so are you. March 24th, 2020, our lives changed. March 24th, 2020, we were sheltering in place, my wife and I. My wife is a retired kindergarten teacher. Now there's a job. You cannot tell me all your state senators. You cannot tell me all the names of your governors. But everybody here knows you're a kindergarten teacher. We go out into public. Big men come up and hug my wife. Mrs. T, do you remember me? Well, you didn't have a beard when you were 5. We went out for her birthday. The server came up. Mrs. T, Brittany, they hugged each other. She hasn't seen Brittany for 35 years. And she said, Brittany, how's your mom? Thanks for asking, Mrs. T. She lives with me now. And my wife had remembered that 35 years ago, Brittany's mom was a single-parent mother who had 2 part-time jobs and still volunteered in her classroom. This marvelous connection that was made. I'm going to embarrass my wife for just a moment one last time. Last night, she went to a wake of one of her students. She was reading obituaries and saw this young man, 30 years of age, and realized that she had taught him 25 years ago. And she went and heard the tragic story of this young man who's only known hard traveling. And like a woman at the funeral home said, the demons finally got him, and he lost his life. And my wife was there to comfort his mother and father, who seemed to be inconsolable. And then she walked back to the table, and there was some memorabilia, and on that table was a book that she had created for this young man 25 years ago that had all of his writings and his pictures and his dreams. See, we never know how our goodness is going to be affecting the lives of other people. Put your nickel down on goodness. So on March 24th, 2020, she also counts votes at our township and wanted to vote. So we're driving down. As I'm pulling into the township, she's speaking gibberish. I ask her my name. She doesn't know. I ask her to raise her arm. She can't. I realize at that moment she's having a stroke. I pull our truck around. I head for the nearest medical facility, Gunderson Lutheran. Even at that time, there's barricades up. I have to pull around the barricades to the back door. 2 nurses come out of the emergency room. One has a wheelchair. They help me get my wife out of the truck into the wheelchair. They take her into the emergency room. I go and I park. I come in. I give them our insurance. And they give me my first mask and told me to sit 40 feet away from everybody else. I'm worried. I'm praying. Will she live? Will she die? Will she be paralyzed? How does this affect our marriage, our children, our grandchildren? After 40 minutes, they come and they bring me in. Everybody in the emergency room has a mask on. She's wearing an oxygen mask, still slurring her words. And then they rolled in a television, and I find myself talking face to face to a neurosurgeon who's working from home. I can see his exercise bike over his right shoulder. He's reading all the things on his computer and telling people in the emergency room what they needed to do at that moment to save her life. And then he looks at me. Your wife has a blood clot in the brain that needs to be removed immediately. The surgery could entail death or permanent paralysis. Please sign the waiver. Now I'm scared. Now by myself. And I sign my name. And then I feel his hand on my shoulder. Just gives me a gentle squeeze. And I turn around and look in the eyes of this nurse. Can't see his face, just his eyes. He has a mask on, but his name tag's Scott. With that one gentle touch. Hello, brother. Hello, fellow bean. Got your back. How many times have each of you done that? Reached out to people, friends, and even strangers, family members. Hello, brother. Hello, sister. Got your back. And then I reached down and I placed my hand on my wife's head and I began to pray, asking for God's blessings on our surgeons and our nurses to get her through surgery alive and well. We're both in tears. This could be the last conversation that we ever have. And the nurse on the other side of the bed looks up and says, Amen, brother, amen. 3 deliberate, sincere words. I do not know her name. I will never forget her words. Amen, brother, amen. The poet David White says, one good word is bread for 1,000. Who's somebody in your life right now that you're thinking about who needs a good word? After this presentation tonight, who you might want to call or text? Let them know that you've been thinking about them and you wish them well, that you're praying for them. She's taken off the surgery. I wait for 5.5 hours. The neurosurgeon finally comes out and says, we're able to remove the clot. Your wife is now in intensive care. Later this night, she'll be brought back to her room, but you have to leave. Emergency neurosurgery, and I couldn't stay because of COVID. I walk out of the hospital looking for another person just to make eye contact with. There's nobody there. Isn't it wonderful that we have the ability to shut out short-term memories? That was only 4 years ago. And there's all kinds of trauma that people are still suffering from today. Well, I called the nurse's station later that night, and the nurse said, well, there's 3 nurses who will look on your wife all night long. Priscilla calls me and said, would you come and get me? I need to come home. Maybe the safest place to be at that time was home. And so I go and I pick her up within 24 hours after emergency neurosurgery. We're going out to the car in a wheelchair. We get her in the car. We're driving home, and I said, how are you? And she said, scared. Once you have 1 stroke, there's more of a possibility that you have a second. And she said, I'm awful tired. I had 3 nurses last night who woke me up every 20 minutes just to see how I was doing. Tom, 2 of the 3 nurses you taught at the Turbo. And the goodness that I tried to reflect into the lives of those young people was reflected back into the life of my wife. Isn't it true? We reap what we sow. If we are kind and patient, forgiving, gentle, that comes back to us. Mean, judgmental, cynical, that comes back to us as well. Sow a thought, reap an action. So an action, reap a habit. So a habit, reap a character. So a character, reap a destiny. Prayer is the school of love. I learned that here. Service is love made visible. I saw that here. Community is joined together with good people for a good greater than ourselves. I've experienced that here tonight. I'm now teaching in the Franciscan tradition, following the example of St. Francis. This joyful saint of the 13th century who would walk through the village each and every day and go, Pace Benny! Just put your right hand in the air and give me a little Italian attitude. Will you please? I know it's difficult. I can't see you, but just do it. But put your hand in the air, okay? Pace Benny! Pace Benny! It literally means peace and all good. And as Francis went through the villages and every encounter he had, Pace Benny, please, In the world in which we live in today, can you think of anything that would be more important tomorrow, or maybe tonight, to bring to the lives of the people that you love or work with, know, or room with? Pace Bene, peace and all good. Thank you very much.
There really are no words to follow that. So thank you so much, Tom. Thank you for sharing that and for sharing in all the ways you do. We are going to call all our Red Talk speakers back to the circle up here. I'm going to get out of the way. We're going to do a talk back session.
We mentioned that this event is different than your average speaker event. So this is your opportunity for you as the audience to engage with our speakers.
To ask your burning questions.
And to hear more about how they prepared and why they chose the topics that they did and the stories that they told.
Whatever you want to hear and know more from them.
The floor is yours. For a little direction, what we are going to do tonight is if you have a question, please raise your hand. Ethan or I will call on you. We'll have you stand, ask your question as loudly as you're able. We will repeat the question for our panelists or speakers. Please be specific if your question is for an individual speaker or if you want multiple to answer. So, who wants to go first? This is the whole point. This is the reason that we do this, is so that you all can get involved. I know someone has a question out there. Right there in the front row. In gray, I believe that's Bailey.
Tom, as a fellow Johnny, what's one piece of advice that you would give Bennies and Johnnies today that you wish you would have known while you were here?
What is one piece of advice that I would give to people who are in I teach now. And I'm terrible. So I teach people your age each and every day, which is a gift. Be involved in your lives. Here is something. Be a contemplative. Here you are joining a tradition that has lasted since the 4th century of contemplation and action. Be a contemplative. Contemplation is the opposite of reaction. So as you're going to have to move forward in all the decisions you have to make in your own life, so that setbacks become now a springboard. That when all of a sudden you begin to recognize that you have a perspective that's different on the world, that the world needs. Have a perspective that boundaries are healthy for myself and for others. The understanding that when you go to the North Woods, expect more than bears. but it seems to me that what happens is that right now people are just reactionary. And what I tell my own students is this, and you won't like it, so I'm sorry. Put your cell phone away.
Who took them out at intermission? Who took their phones out at intermission?
It's just that there's the power of quiet, the power of silence. And that's what I'd say. Be a contemplative. Please enjoy the tradition that's being shared with you.
Thank you so much, Tom. Is there another hand over on that side?
Yeah, question for everyone on our panel here. Having attended the College of St. Benedict and St. John's University, as many of us in this room have, what is one way that you act in the way of our Benedictine values each and every day?
That's for all of you. Do you want to start with Tess and then we can pass right the middle?
Yeah. Is this on? Testing? Yes. One of my favorite Benedictine values is hospitality. I've grown up in a wonderful home that loves hosting, and I found that here as well. I definitely find community, or so I guess that's another one of my favorite values, hospitality and community coming together. So being around friends while studying, being around friends while eating, and even just in dorm rooms, I found that to be an amazing aspect of my experience, that there's a important and a focus on those two lenses, hospitality and community here.
For me, I would say awareness of God. I've really worked hard over my 3 years being here so far to create an environment that allows me to practice my faith as much as possible. So that's part of the reason I started a worship club here, and I like to encourage other people to do the same.
I would say my passion for social justice, as I was an educator and speech language pathologist, and now working with organizations. I've always been an activist, and I had several professors talk to us about how you can disagree with things that are happening in the Catholic Church and still be faithful and be a social justice activist. So I appreciate that about here.
I would say hospitality as well. I'm an SJU resident assistant for going on my 3rd year now, so I've been, again, hosting students within my room. They'd come over, they'd talk to me, tell me what's going on in life, and I'd just be like a role model for them. So hospitality is a big thing, but also respect. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a big person on respect. I address individuals, sir, ma'am, Mr., everything. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. That's just my culture. Respect is a big thing. And so I tell people all the time, I demand respect, but I also expect you to demand respect from me. So I make sure I address everybody how they deserve to be demanded to. So respect is a big thing for me.
I was introduced to Dorothy Day, the founder of the Catholic Worker Movement, while I was here at St. John's. Dorothy Day was influenced by Virgil Michael, very prominent monk here at St. John's. And he taught Dorothy the Benedictine tradition that you greet everybody as if they're Christ himself. Now I want to tell you sometimes in terms of the Catholic Worker House, sometimes Christ is at one too many drinks. Sometimes Christ could probably use a bath. Sometimes Christ is very hungry and his children are yelling. But I think what's really extraordinary about it is this. Is reaching out to the people on the margins and making sure that they have their God-given dignity shared with them.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I would like to ask Tess what you ate on day 7.
I think we all want to know that one.
Right away, we broke open s'mores. So we had dessert for lunch, and then that night, I believe we had a hamburger stew. So there was a lot of meat, a lot of pasta. So yeah, those were 2 really good meals. Thanks for asking.
Any more questions? We have room for 1 or 2 more.
Burning thoughts.
In the back in red.
All right, so this is for Tom. I was just wondering, how did you come to making that master's program at advisory role? I actually just been looking at college afterwards, and your program was one that I've been thinking about. So I just wanted to know how it came to be a thing and how you decided to create it.
Well, I read Robert Greene's essay, The Servant as Leader, when it was first published. It was published by Paulus Press, by the way. It wasn't in a secular. He first published it, and Paulus Press picked it up. And I decided right then I wanted to live my life because we understand that the greatest servant leader of all time is Jesus. You know who's talking about that? People in business. I speak to CEOs and corporations, the United States military, healthcare, and I recognize that the greatest leader of all time washed people's feet. And I always thought, how would you bring Sunday to Monday? How is it that the things that we hold to be most deep in our lives are expressed in the work that we do each and every day? And we've been drawing people from really across the globe who just feel called to come and be part of this work. And so it's a gift. Thank you.
Yes, right in the middle.
I would be willing to bet that the majority of us in this space are saying to ourselves, I could never do that. How could they do that? So I'm curious, for us it's very courageous to speak in public for 10 minutes. I'd love to hear, what did you tell yourselves right before you were on to just give you that courage to do what many of us just no way could believe we could do?
I did some power poses. And my aunt, shout out to her in the crowd, she told me to move my body, so I was dancing just to get my energy up.
I was a dancer my whole life, so I just told myself I've never forgotten a dance on stage, so this is kind of similar.
I have to remind myself that perfect is boring. And I also have a ritual where I dance and sing to This Is Me by The Greatest Showman.
I just want to say I witnessed that. She actually, the track was playing and everything, so I agree with that. I guess for me, I always been on stage. I love the stage. I love public speaking. So what I tell myself every time is make the stage my own. That's really what I say. So, you know, I have this carpet here. I make this entire carpet my own. I won't just stay in one place long. I get comfortable. So I tell myself this is my stage. But that's more like my idea.
I prayed for all of you. Prayer is a school of love. And when love is communicated, there's openness in this room. What was happening, all the details, all the preparation, the work of the MCs, create an environment in which we could all experience grace.
That was beautifully said, I must say. I think we have time for one more question. Who's going to be out here in the back, or right there in the second tier? Yep.
Okay, now you talk about rainforest vines. We were talking about advancing companies and corporations. What's the best piece of advice you can give for organizations who want to hire someone who has a rainforest vine?
I definitely think it's about listening and lifting up the voices of people who think differently. And so if they're trying to hire or attract people that the systems often haven't been designed for, it's about just asking them the questions and lifting up their voices.
Thank you.
Yeah, that brings us back full circle. It all starts with listening, right? So let's give us another big, big thank you to all of our speakers tonight. Thank you so much for giving your time, sharing your expertise, and believing in the power of these moments to really move us.
Thank you. It's such an inspiring show of our communities at St. Ben's and St. John's and the collective wisdom in our midst. We'd also like to say a huge thank you to all the staff and students who assisted with making this event happen tonight.
And at this time, we'd like to ask Amy Anderson and Jean Dempsey to stand and be recognized. But without them, tonight's event would not have been possible.
It wouldn't have happened. We'd also like to thank our amazing REDTalks speaker coaches, Dr. Carol Brees, Dr. Michael Rubelkey, Jane Kavanaugh, Tessa's mom, and our speaker coach extraordinaire, Kanan Cooper.
You will notice there's a QR code on the last page of your program. So the work to create next year's 2025 REDTalks is already beginning. So if you would like to help, or volunteer, or speak, or know someone, please follow that link. And also fill out those sheets we left at your seats.
It was mentioned earlier that REDTalks is an annual event hosted by our Young Alum Committee. If you are a Benny or Johnny in the audience tonight that has graduated in the last 10 years or less, we encourage you to get involved. Volunteer, show up to events. Be sure to follow their Facebook and Instagram pages so you can keep in touch, share your experiences and stories, and pass on the tradition that you learned here at St. Ben's and St. John's.
And finally,
to all of you,
we hope tonight, thank you.
Thank you for joining us this evening.
We hope tonight reminds you that the power that comes from listening to each other. May you be inspired to keep your connections strong
and flourishing.
It's been our pleasure taking you on this journey tonight.
We wish you all a good evening.
Safe travels.
Thank you.